We return with a big breaking news update. The meeting of the Quad countries will be held in Hiroshima tomorrow. Well, there were reports suggesting that this might happen. In fact, the Foreign Secretary, Vinay Kwatra, had also said that these are plans that are being made for a Quad dialogue leaders meeting in Japan on the sidelines of the G7 summit. But now we have a confirmation. Quad will be held in Japan tomorrow itself, and the White House statement confirms the same. It's been rescheduled. Remember, this after President Biden had to postpone his trip to Australia. The Quad leaders now agreeing that they will hold their summit in Hiroshima to ensure that the four leaders could come together to mark the Quad's progress over the past year. So this visit of the Prime Minister becomes all the more crucial, Rishabh, with the Quad meeting also slated for tomorrow. It's been rescheduled, was to take place, remember, earlier in Australia. Now it's going to happen in Japan with the Prime Minister already in the nation.
Definitely, if you see, Quad summit is an important summit. The grouping of Quad is something that is very important, not only to India, but the whole region for that matter. Be it India, be it Japan, be it Australia or US, we do have a common problem to face, and the elephant in the room whenever there is Quad summit is the Chinese expansionist policies, especially in the Indo-Pacific region, and as well as on the borders with India, be it in Arunachal or in Ladakh area. And hence, this meeting is very, very important. And there have been stories coming in the way, China has been increasing its presence in Indo-Pacific is something that is bothering both Japan as well as Australia. So that is important. Initially, this meeting was supposed to happen in Sydney, but because Joe Biden, the President of the United States, have to return back to the homeland for domestic purposes, the summit has been shifted to Hiroshima, and that will take place tomorrow. And it will be very, very important to see what the outcome would be. Remember when last time...
The Quad meeting originally scheduled to be held in Australia, Sydney, was cancelled due to US President Joe Biden not being able to attend it due to issues related to the US economy. Has now been rescheduled, will take place in Japan itself tomorrow. Before I take in a word from Mr. Maruf Raza, who's also joining us on the phone line. Priya, quickly take us through the statement by White House.
Right. This is the official communication that has been put forth by the White House, where President Biden has thanked the leaders of other Quad member nations here, Anthony Albanese of Australia, Prime Minister Kishida Fumio of Japan, and Prime Minister Narendra Modi of India for making flexible arrangements to their schedules. Along with sharing strategic assessments, the leaders will welcome new forms of Quad cooperation on secure digital technology, submarine cables, infrastructure, capacity building, and maritime domain awareness. President Biden thanks all other leaders for their flexibility, and he looks forward to rescheduling his trip as well. Those were some of the pointers which make it very crucial for the Quad meeting to happen, and which is why, despite it having been cancelled due to unavoidable reasons in Australia, it is now going to take place tomorrow in Japan.
Okay, Mr. Maruf Raza, what do you make of this? Lots that we're looking out for now, with the much spoken of Prime Minister Modi-Zelensky meeting that's to take place, and now comes the information that the Quad meeting will also very much happen in Hiroshima tomorrow, and has been confirmed by White House, as was just put out by Priya.
Well, there are a couple of points which as yet I think most people don't touch upon. One is the fact that the Quad was formed essentially in response to China's aggressive policies, but the Quad countries have refrained from making any collective statement or pointed statement towards China's aggressive expansionist policies. So what they come out with is a kind of very lukewarm set of ideas, bilateral trade, technical engagement, sharing of various other common technologies, but nothing specific to countering China. Second is, India is the only country amongst the Quad countries that shares a border with China and is facing a hostile China. As we have seen, since the Galwan incident, China has refused to back off. Thirdly, the Quad meeting being held in Hiroshima was a great idea, but I think the Quad leaders have to step up to the challenge. They can't keep going in circles and saying that we'll do this and that. We will address a number of issues that are of bilateral concern, but we'll not collectively address the issue of how to tame China or restrict China.
Okay.
And China has been browbeating everybody to fall in line.
Okay.
The next point is, as far as Quad is concerned, Quad is essentially a collective arrangement with 4 countries that have very clearly made known their hostility towards China.
Okay, it's very interesting you mentioned China. I also want to take in a word from Sushant Sareen. Mr. Raza, stay on with us because, reports do suggest, Mr. Sareen, that the Prime Minister in an interview to a Japanese publication has said that peace and tranquility in the border areas is essential for normal bilateral ties with China. Now, with a tightly packed schedule and comes the confirmation of the Quad meet also that will take place tomorrow itself in Hiroshima. How do you see this playing out?
No, I think the script is pretty much written. I don't think India is backing down from taking on China. I think our position on the Chinese aggression along the frontier is pretty clear. It's been made clear on a number of occasions by the Prime Minister, by the Foreign Minister, by the Defense Minister, by the government in general. So I think that's a no-brainer, how we stand vis-a-vis China. Even in relation to the Quad, I personally would be inclined more in favor of a more robust kind of a military alliance than what it is right now. But even then, I think the Quad countries are moving in a certain direction, and clearly that spooks the Chinese, and that is why concerns are being expressed. So I think on the Quad, we are doing fine. I would agree to some extent with Maruf, I believe it was, who was speaking earlier.
Yes.
I would agree with him that on technology and other things, we could want more. But I think, we need to be realistic on how much technology is going to be shared because nobody really parts with technology. But I think the G7 meeting is also going to be important going forward, both because I think India has an opportunity to plug the agenda for the G20, which will be held later in India. And in fact, this is one of the reasons why India has been invited, because India is the chair of the G20. But along with it, it's very clearly laid down that they are looking at, the G7 countries are looking at Indo-Pacific security. Which kind of fits in very well with our larger strategic orientation. But then there is, of course, the Ukraine issue, where I think there could be some pressure which will be on India.
Okay.
I believe the Prime Minister has had a meeting with Mr. Zelensky today. But I think, again, on Ukraine, India's position is very clear. We are not backing one side or the other. We would very much want peace to be restored, but I don't think anybody really has as a solution to the crisis as of now. Because most of the solutions which are being forwarded are either unacceptable to Ukraine or to Russia. And nobody has been able to find a middle ground which both the protagonists would be satisfied with. And then, of course, there are other countries which seem to be egging on Ukraine for some valid reasons and some not so valid reasons to continue taking on the Russians.
Okay.
And the Russians have their own issues with the Ukrainians. So it's a right royal as far as the European or the Eurasian theater is concerned. But I think there is more to look forward to as far as Indo-Pacific is concerned for India.
Well, we're likely to get lots of news points over the next 2 days, that's for sure. Mr. Raza, would you want to come in? Because interestingly, Sushant Sareen is also shedding light on the Ukraine-Russia war and remember how the G7 members have already spoken of sanctions. They're mulling on more sanctions. They want to hurt the Russian economy. And in that sense, India in attendance, there are going to be several bilaterals that are going to take place as well. But what India maintains and the stand it takes on the, Russian aggression against Ukraine, that's also something that everyone is watching out for.
Right. And Mr. Sareen has made some very interesting points. The first thing to understand is that the primary purpose of G7 is basically to get the world economy on a stronger footing, because 45% of the world's economy is rested on the shoulders of G7 members. But they tend to be trying to use this forum as a platform to muster more and more support against Russia. Problem is the European countries are a bit reluctant to confront Russia because of their own double standards. The second thing is that the G7 is also not having China in attendance. To that extent, they'll have a free run at finger pointing at China.
And the messaging is loud and clear, Mr. Raza. You know, a Japanese ambassador to India has said it clearly that we must send a clear message to Putin. Russia will pay the price for Ukraine war. So that is the sentiment that exists all across G7 and India in attendance. Very interesting what's lined up for us. We head into a very short break. Mr. Sareen, Mr. Raza, please stay on with us. We'll be right back.